Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Saturday Morning Comic Review. I'm your host, Dylan Wallace. Today, we had an interesting episode for you guys, and the reason I say it's interesting, it is an Omega. We have part books from last week, part books that are going to be backlog books. But I say interesting because I feel like a lot of my reviews are way off from what League was thinking. So if you want to hear maybe a different perspective on some of these books, this may be actually a pretty good episode. But it is an Omega, so no polls or anything like that. We can go ahead and just jump right into it. So let's go for it, shall we? So we have 10 books as per usual. Like I mentioned, I will call all these out for the audio folks. For the video, of course, you can see it up on your screen. So we have One World Under Doom, number 6. We have World Tree, number 16. We have Absolute Green Lantern, number 5. We have Bitter Root, number 5. And then starts up the backlog. So we have Batman the Brave and the Bold, number 16, which is our anthology. And then here's where things get a little interesting in the way that I wanted to do this. So you guys know that I do a lot of X-Men, but we're in the middle of this X-Manhunt is where I'm at right now in my backlog journey. And so I wanted to just make sure that I was reading those in the order of which that I have them. So it's a 7-part series. So first we start off with the Uncanny X-Men, which is part 1. But I don't have part 2, which was Nyx. But then we get to part 3, which is Storm, number 6. Then we go to part 4, which is X-Men, number 13. And then part 5, X Factor number 8. So that's all like one story that's intertwining between all these different X-Men books. And then last but not least is going to be the second volume of Local Man. This is going to be the first issue in here, which is Local Man Gold, is what I read. So that is like kind of a one-shot. It just gives you more character development on Crosscheck in particular. So those will be the books that we review for today in that particular order, in case you want to skip around for whatever reason. So the first one we have here is going to be One World Under Doom, and I enjoyed this book a lot. This book was in contention for winning Comic of the Week. I think it was ranked number 5 at the time when I was reviewing the books on Saturday, and for me, this is the Comic of the Week, or at least of the episode anyways, and I'd probably save the last episode too. Maybe potentially I'd give it to Absolute Superman, but this one was pretty incredible. So it's surprising though, I gave it a 4.5 obviously with a review like that, but League only gave it a 3.9. I'd say, I don't think I was leaning towards a 5. It was pretty solid at 4.5, but I wasn't leaning anywhere towards a 4. So I was a little surprised to see it as low as it was, but to each their own. Say for this one, not so much about the fighting and the action, it is more of a narrative piece. So for this book, to get you caught up on everything, and before I dive in, I always got to remind you guys what this review show is all about. I will give you a quick synopsis of the book. I'll try to catch you up on where things are at thus far as the story is concerned, but I do spoil the heck out of the books, so if you don't want spoilers, this just isn't going to be the podcast for you. Just keep that in mind. And then for the video folks, we'll flip through some of the artwork as well so you can get a flavor of that. And then I'll let you know whether or not this is a good time to jump into the book. So that's kind of how it will go and how it will flow book to book over these next 10. So for Doom, this is the event that we're in right now for Marvel, and things are finally starting to unravel as to what Doom has been doing behind the scenes in his master plan this whole time. So what Mr. Fantastic, his plan right now, we had all these different heroes, the X-Men, actually, sorry, I say the X-Men, no, we have the Avengers, Fantastic Four, all trying to help out and all trying to stop Doom. None of them can really prove that Doom is doing anything wrong. It all seems legitimate. He actually seems to be getting like just genuine favor across the world. But we get to a point where Maria Hill shows up and she's like, I know how we can get through to Doom and basically what we need to do in order to attack. That was issue 5. Issue 6 sets it up where Mr. Fantastic decides to have a good old-fashioned debate with Doom, broadcast on live TV. So that's what they do. And they come up with notes and they just start debating back and forth between philosophy and what they think is the right thing to do, what the right ethical thing to do is, so on and so forth. And basically, the conclusion is that Mr. Fantastic's making phenomenal points, but with the magic that Doom has, he's able to actually tap into like people's souls and their energy and what they want to hear, right? So he's more charismatic, and he ends up actually just kind of winning the debate naturally as it's going on and on. And Mr. Fantastic can basically sense that there's no way he's going to win, but he kind of continues to do it. While that happens, all the other heroes, mostly the Avengers, are outside of Latveria, which is, Doom's home country, but there's this big shield around it and they can't get through it. But Maria, her whole thing is she found the weak spot. It's like, here's where you're going to attack at this exact time, and only a couple people can get in. So they send in Black Widow, they send in Wanda, and they send in Captain Marvel. So those three go into and make it in, and they start to investigate. And very quickly they see that in one of the major cities, it looks like all these people are running around, but actually it's just visions of people, right? As though it's like a hologram, and they're like running the same path over and over. So Wanda, of course, being, the Scarlet Witch, senses all this magic. She's like, this magic is incredibly powerful. But it's weird that the magic, as we're going into the city, actually isn't that powerful. So it means like the spell is purposefully to keep people in rather than preventing people from getting in once they're on the inside. So it's like trying to trap people, basically. So she comes to that realization. Then they get deeper in and they see this enormous building that's emitting this crazy amount of different layers of magic and magical spells. And the Scarlet Witch is like, this is so incomprehensible to me. I could undo this, but it would take eons to be able to do it from just the amount of different magic that is all stacked together. And it's like quite literally impossible to have this amount of magic, even for the Sorcerer Supreme, which is what Doom is. So they go in and they find out that all the citizens of Doom are in this building, and they're being like harvested, basically, their energy, in order to continue to power all the magic that the entire world is using to keep, I guess, the peace, everyone happy, everyone fed, all, so on and so forth, all the good things that they think are happening. This is the cost for it. And while that is happening, again, the debate is still taking place. So they go and like text all this information and send the photos of like, here's all the terrible stuff that's happening. So Mr. Fantastic looks at his phone, shows it, of course, on the live broadcast, and Doom's like, oh crap, like they found me out. And Doom's like, hey, look, it's fine. There has to be some sort of sacrifice in order to be able to make all this stuff work. The sacrifice of like a couple for the billions of people on planet Earth, it's well worth it. But then it gets to the point where it starts showing photos of kids being tortured as well, and that's kind of like the last straw, right? So everyone like loses it, starts flipping out, and then Doom is like, don't you guys understand? Don't you get it? And even earlier in the argument, which made valid points, you have all these heroes that have all these Omega level different abilities, and they haven't done anything for the good of the world, right? Literally, Storm could manipulate weather so that way there is just harvest all over the planet, right? Where winds need to stop blowing, she can stop it. And like can literally call in wind and air and rain and all that stuff. Doesn't do any of that stuff. Stark, rather than creating weapons, could do something that helps with robotics, helps with manufacturing, just whatever sort of commodity thing to be able to help out the world rather than manufacturing literal weapons. And, the list just goes down and down and down of all these different heroes that have all these abilities that it could actually be beneficial, but they're not doing any of that stuff. Here is Doom actually putting, money where his mouth is and doing all this wonderful stuff. And then the realization here of like, this is a sacrifice that it requires. So of course Doom and Mr. Fantastic start fighting, and then that's basically the cliffhanger where you see here Doom literally stretching out Mr. Fantastic's head, like ripping it apart. It's getting to that point now where the Doom has the upper hand. Awesome book. I love how they basically spilled out all that of like, here are all the wonderful things heroes could be doing, but they're not. I don't want to go into like a huge political rant, but I do think about all these billionaires that have all this money, and it's like, how many times do you actually hear them like doing anything of good with this war chest of money rather than buying like these mega yachts and so on and so forth? It's just ridiculous, right? Of like, why isn't one of these guys Batman? It doesn't make any sense. It's like all of you could be Batman, but you choose to be Lex Luthor. Why would that be? Ugh. And so you almost have a similar thing kind of going on here, calling out the different heroes, but you can see obviously in Doom not able to do it all by himself either. And then here are like these enormous things that he needs to sacrifice that nobody with any sort of moral compass would be willing to do. So I loved the book. I thought it was excellent. Flipping through some of the artwork here, I thought the artwork was top notch as well. Some of the better stuff you're going to get from Marvel. Who was on this one? We have RB Silva is the artist on this one. So I got to show you the one scene in particular, but this is a lot of the debate that's taken place. Here's where, I love this scene right here, right? So we have Doom, and he's just basically calling out all the different, scientific discoveries and things that people could be doing in order to save the planet, and they just choose not to. And it gets to the point then where all three ladies are now in Latveria, and they're finding out what's really happening, and the information is going to start to get relayed back over. And then we get to the fight between Doom and Mr. Fantastic, and everything is like just starting to break down. So yeah, great book. Is it the time to jump in? I think you'd actually be fine if you jumped in at this one. I don't really see the issue. So you may want to consider it if it's still out there, if any of that kind of appeal to you. So that's One World Under Doom, issue number 6. Again, I gave it a 4.5. The League only gave it a 3.9. But I would say the comic of the week, in my opinion. Great cover art on that one as well. So the next one here is going to be World Tree number 16. I was debating, like, do I show this one or not? Because, like, if you're looking at the video, you can see why. If not, go ahead and look it up. Issue number 16 cover, right? But I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 4.2. That feels about right. It was a better issue, especially it was all about the reveal at the end for me in particular. So we have the World Tree. How do I even set up what's all happening in this universe? There's this undernet website, so World Wide Web. There's something in the undernet. If you access it, you look at it, it turns it into this crazy psycho killer. That basically ran amok and spread to a whole bunch of different computers, and now the world has fallen into complete cataclysm, basically. And now it's like a Mad Max world out there. And one of the survivors who was part of this group that was trying to stop it has created this underground bunker. The other kid, who was like towards the beginning of in like the very first issues, the first outbreak, if you will, he's able to find them. So they both survived. Now they're together and they're trying to figure out like what's their next move. But right now, basically, the one main guy who's part of the group that originally discovered the internet was like, hey, I'm just trying to rebuild the internet as it was. We have a little community down here. We've been living down here for years. And the reason that they're down there is up above, you have all these killers that are out there and it seems like they've kind of transcended into these weird, like kind of zombie things where they can transform into different beings, and like they're somehow like one with the internet. It's like a weird thing where they like can like teleport in and out, and they're extraordinarily powerful, super quick. It's like whatever it is, like 28 days later, or like it's like that, like kind of zombies, like super fast and like crazy, and there's no rationalizing with them. And this issue basically picks up after their next decision was like trying to see if there's a way that they could reverse this some way somehow. And so they decided that they're going to do that, but these creatures up above have found where they're all hiding out, and since they found them, now they're starting to infiltrate, and slowly but surely they're like making their way through, but like staying hidden at the same time. And so when these guys then decide that they are going to spread everything out, that is where kind of the main queen bee shows up and says like, hey, and tries to tell this to the community members. Your leader down there who set that community up for you, he's lying to you. Everything's fine up above. Come join us. Things will be good. Obviously, it's a lie. And then they all start attacking. And as they start attacking, they basically decide that we need to bomb this archive of the internet and like destroy it all. So that way there's no evidence type deal, and she can't like get access to it. And when they were thinking about doing that, the one discovery the one kid made was that he was told from Gabriel's like the original kind of person who found all of this, that the website of World Tree, if you go into it and type into it, it's like a two-way thing to where it like accesses the internet, but then also like you can read it like anywhere in the world. And so he was hoping that it would just be a blog post, and that would be the post out there to the world that you could see it. So that was posted out before they destroyed everything. Then it goes way back into the past, into the earlier issues of like the time before. And this is like even before the outbreak took place. And Gabriel is still alive at this point. He died like way early on. And so this is like before things even break out. And he sees the message on the World Tree. So it's like this thing can now post, I guess, into the past. And I wonder if it can do it vice versa, which is insane. And so this is probably how Gabriel is, I would assume, tipped off about all of this in the first place and tries to set this whole plan in motion to try to prevent it, which is nuts. So that like was like a massive reveal of like, okay, posting this thing now went to the past, and Gabriel is now like reading it from the past. And it was like, whoa, this goes deeper than you could have ever imagined type deal, which is nuts. So very cool reveal at the end there, but still just a 4 for me, I'd say. So let's flip through here. It is at the point where like this book is like crazy confusing. It's like how much do I share when I try to recap with all this stuff versus like what's happening here. So there's this guy, Nelson. He was like part of the original, but you see they turn into like these weird like dog things, and they're down there and trying to, you know, attack them and make them part of their own fold. But here's like the original guy who was from the whole thing. I think his name's Yoshi or something like that. And he goes by Koopa King, I know, for the community down here, or King Koopa. But yeah, you have more like these zombie things, and they're starting to attack the base, and it doesn't seem like a whole bunch of people are going to be able to get out of it. And they're trying to, you know, figure out what all to do next. This is when the red alert goes off. Here's the big old like server farm that they have down here of like the internet that they're running downstairs. They decide to go ahead and blow it up. And then here is the reveal that Gabriel is able to see on the World Tree, the exact same message, like way back in 1999, which is nuts. So cool. Loving this book. This was one of the big reasons comics changed for me in the first place, of like, oh, superhero movies. And sure enough, it's just a continuation of like, you just don't know what the hell's going to happen next. And I'm loving it. So that's World Tree number 16. Ooh, tough to recommend jumping into this. I feel like, honestly, you just got to start with the trade. Start with the first trade and go from there. You'll know pretty quickly whether or not you like it. It's James Tynion, so keep that in mind, right? Like, do you like Tynion or not? I think most people do. He does like more of a horror side of things. I just love his writing style is a mix of like shock value horror, but then he also has like some of these funny spots as well too. It's like such a mix, and takes you on quite the journey as you're reading through any of his books. But anyways, again, World Trade number 16, I gave it a 4. League gave it a 4.2. Then next up here, we have the Green Lantern number 5. Absolute Green Lantern number 5, I should say. So I gave this a 4. League gave it a 4 as well.
Nailed it. I know. Thank you. Moving on.
Good book, solid book. I think it's more about the action in this one. In this issue in particular, we learn more about Hal and how he received the black fear from Abin Sur. And basically, after Jo received her powers, the whole diner kind of caved in next to him. And so after that, it was basically, no. I'm skipping a whole different piece, actually. So the diner caved in after he already got the powers. But basically, when Abin Sur was shot, then like the fear started to show up in Abin Sur and reverted over to like passing over the black, I don't know, goo or whatever that becomes fear, while Jo got the green that was effectively the Green Lantern. So that's what all took place. Then the diner fell down. The friend that they were with, he was kind of being interrogated by some other evil Lex Luthor type character who's trying to figure out what all is going on. So you get a little more context to how each one of them got their powers. Then a majority of the book is just the two fighting, right? It's just Jo and Hal fighting back and forth, trying to get advantage. A bunch of really cool scenes that you get there. But the biggest thing happens is when they're fighting, this enormous Green Lantern, the actual Green Lantern, is in the middle of the city. It's like multiple blocks long and like multiple stories high. It's enormous. But they find themselves getting sucked or pulled into the Green Lantern as they're fighting. And when they do, who else do they find in there but Jon Stewart, who's sitting there and he's like yellow and almost like the embodiment of what was, Sinestro's like kind of fear, but who knows, it could be like a different emotion because it seems like they're playing on different things, and the black is already represents fear. So it's like, what does this yellow one actually mean? It could be something totally completely different. So it's kind of interesting, and it's mostly just like a setup and huge cliffhanger of like, A, John is still alive, which is dope. But then B, like now he's yellow. So you got the black, the green, and the yellow. And how's it all going to intersect? And like what's going to happen next is the coolest part here. So let's go ahead and flip through some of the artwork, as you can see. So I guess this is why I brought up the diner first, because that is in the order of which that the book kind of takes place here. But yeah, this is basically where the fear starts to take on to Hal, and then the fighting that takes place for a majority of this issue is just the fighting kind of back and forth between these two. You get a little piece about Jo and some of the rejection that she's felt in the past, so a little more character development and exposition from her. But this is what I mean from like the Green Lantern, like literally the size of like a small block or village, and then boom, they're fighting, and they either get sucked into it or they fly into it. I think they actually fly into it, and then at the very end here is where that reveal takes place. And there's John, there's Jo, and there's Hal. So cool book. Enjoying this one. I'd say maybe of the absolutes, the weakest. Yeah, probably it's safe to say it's that or Flash, and I'd actually say probably Green Lantern is the weakest, but still 4s or above on all the books, which is great. So that's Absolute Green Lantern number 5. Is this the one to jump into? No. You'd want to start off with number 1 if you could. I don't think there's really another good way, because it's intentionally trying to give you the story bits and pieces at a time and out of chronological order, like non-linear storytelling, I should say, intentionally. So next up we have here is Bitterroot number 5. And this one I was surprised at how off I was from League. So I gave it a 4, but League gave it a 4.4. Now granted, look at the sample size on this, only 25 ratings. So okay, but as I was reading through this, I was like, you know, it was good and it's a good conclusion, but I don't think it was anything that was like over the top or kind of next level or compelled me to like, I really want more. I was like, okay, they definitely left the door open, so there can be more. This is the conclusion of this. But I didn't feel like, oh my gosh, like I absolutely need more of this, like print it right now, please. So Bitterroot is basically this agency that works like for the federal government. It's all black men and women that are a part of this agency, and they're fighting what are called the Jinyu. And they're attacking a whole bunch of different southern states and southern cities. And basically you've come to the realization of what this all means. And you find out pretty quickly if you're just paying attention. But the Jinyu is just an allegory for racism, right? is all it is. And the government is claiming the Jinyu do not exist. There hasn't been an attack for the Jinyu on like forever. And any of these claims are just not true. But this agency, they'll go down and they still investigate, and they're like, I don't care if we're getting funding or not, like we're going to figure this thing out. And of course the Jinyu are there and they exist, and they were fighting them throughout, trying to figure out what to do. They're getting resistance the whole time because they're all black and they're going to a southern state. So you have, you know, kind of that whole civil rights thing that's taking place as well. Book number 5 here is basically a post-mortem of what actually took place. So it all starts in the president's office, and the president is like, I don't like your guys' agency, basically. I want to shut it down, and the Jinyu don't exist. I don't even know why you guys went down to that town, and it's been nothing but a complete disaster. And then you get flashbacks of what all actually took place, which was a major Jinyu attack at the very end that all the agents went down and defended against, but there was a lot of collateral damage that took place, a lot of destruction and devastation, and so on and so forth. And the president's like, we just almost need to pretend like this never happened and never existed, and your agency needs to go away. And so of course the agents are fighting back of like, no, this is only escalated and gotten worse, and the government continues to claim that it doesn't exist, but it does, and here's like the result of it. So we need to learn and study more and be able to prevent this and lean into it. And that's basically is just kind of the back and forth with the president, and then more of the storyline of like the destruction and devastation and everything that happened that effectively destroyed the town. And like I said, it is straight up just an allegory for like racism in the South, or just in this country, and just like the claims that it doesn't exist or it does exist, or, you know, so on and so forth. Now, it does take place in the past, right? So it is like civil rights era is when all this happened, and they're claiming that the Jinyu was a thing that stopped, I think in the 20s or something like that is when they claimed. But obviously still alive and well in this universe. And so they were able to stop it and squash it for now, but that doesn't mean that it's done forever, and certainly leaves the door open for telling the next story and the next timeline for Bitterroot. So that's issue number 5 here. Not the time to jump in. Again, it is the conclusion of this story. But this will basically show and give you a breakdown here of what I was talking about. So they're in the president's office, and here, sure enough, they're fighting the Jinyu heavy and fighting them pretty hard here as this whole town is being destroyed, and just trying to put up a compelling argument. So here are our agents here, and then the regular kind of classic FBI was there as well, and they're supporting everything that they saw because they witnessed the whole thing as well. And then flashbacks, to the city and the fight that all took place there and everything. So that's basically what it is. It's just this back and forth between here's like the crazy fight that all happened and took place, and the reinforcements that were sent in to be able to liberate this town from the Jinyu. And here we have, the president still denying that it ever took place and it wasn't really a thing the whole time. I will say the art on this, as you can see on the video version, is phenomenal. Like really, really high quality stuff. Great detail of like these just monsters and different vines that are going out and grabbing people by the arms and wrapping them around their neck and so on and so forth. So it was it was a fun little book, I'd say, overall. Genuinely surprised, especially after that first issue. The first one was pretty dense, and then you start to pick up on everything that's happening, so I'm glad that I didn't drop it. And then the next one that would come out, I'd be interested in reading it for sure. So that's Bitterroot, The Next Movement, issue number 5. Again, I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 4.4. So the trade, I'm sure, will be coming out in a couple months. If you're interested, you can always pick that up there. Then the next is going to be Batman the Brave and the Bold, number 16. So this is our anthology. As those who know, who have been listening to the show for a while, I always have to pull up my notes because it's like 4 or 5 short stories that take place in this particular book, and I can't remember it all off the top of my head. It's weird when I do this. I've mentioned it before, I'll just say it again. I look at the cover and I was like, oh yeah, and then like I just start rattling everything that came off. But when I look at Brave and the Bold, I'm like my brain freezes up because it's like literally 4 or 5 different books that all took place in this one book, and then the cover has like literally nothing to do with anything that has happened or taken place. So anyways, the 4 that we have here. So I'll just start and just go one by one. So the first one is the conclusion, and thank goodness, to Nightwing and Deadman, Down the Road Part 4. And I did not enjoy this book, the conclusion, really any piece about it. So it's all about Nightwing. He used to be in the circus. Deadman used to be part of the circus as well. They're trying to find this mystery of this lady that dove into a river, but she didn't die. They follow this trail, and they basically get to a path where they're trying to be sacrificed, and Nightwing is trying to be turned into Deadman. Deadman is offered this is like the start of the story. Deadman is offered a deal of, hey, you can come back to life. You just basically have to pull one more selfish move and then have Nightwing become the new Deadman, and you're free to go. Deadman refuses, and with him as he's Deadman, and his whole thing is he's supposed to bring people to dead and then ferry them across, and he has a coin for that. He somehow tricks whoever is against them, gives them the coin. That person or entity or beast leaves and then finally crosses over. So when that happens, Deadman still kind of remains who he is, but it frees the grasp on Nightwing. So Nightwing is then able to fight out, and then they're able to, stop whatever was basically taking place here. And everything all kind of goes all away, and everyone lives happily ever after. It was weak. It was confusing. It was a little boring. Not the greatest. The art was good. I'll give it, but that's about it. Then we have First Watch. So First Watch is basically a very quick short story. Guy, his first day in Metropolis, on the police department, what it's all like. He gets at first, there's a couple calls, and they're all like weak, and then he gets like, there's a superhero call, and then the veteran that he's with is like, oh no, we don't deal with those, like we got other stuff to do. And they go, of course, take care of a whole bunch of other like petty little things. And then he's basically like, yeah, this isn't what I expected. And then the vet's like, very similar to you. I joined up because of Superman, this, that, and the other. But the reason I joined up is Superman was stopping whatever kind of crazy beast. And while that happened, someone just took advantage and tried to steal something from a lady's opened up car. And that was the moment that I knew. It's like, yeah, Superman's going to take care of the big stuff, but he needs us to take care of like some of the smaller things. And I was like, oh, that is a good story and a good kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Good kind of, morality check or basically, moral of the story is that we do have impacts as humans, right? Like we all have a part to play in this. And if all of us kind of just did our part, you just imagine how incredible this world would be if you just I don't know. I just think about it from time to time, and it's like, man, like how many selfish decisions could have been like prevented and stopped that would have led to XYZ terrible thing of happening, you know? And it's like all such like emotional creatures that just won't use logic sometimes, and then sometimes we use logic too much and then not our emotion on like some pretty obvious things. I don't know, we're kind of crazy as human beings. It is what it is. But this one obviously had me in my feels, so I was like, this was a good one. Then next was Duality Part 2. This one was pretty weak as well. So we have the commissioner of the Gotham PD, Renee Montoya. She is trying to figure out who is threatening her family, and then the threats kind of continue. She ends up in her office, and she finds out who it is. It's Zero, and Zero attacks her in her office. So she tries to get out as quickly as possible, but while she's in the hospital, Zero is putting out like all this slanderous things about her, and we just really don't know why. So the thing that's about Renee Montoya is she's also the vigilante, is like her superhero. But it seems like Zero knows that, and so what she tries to do is get to the press and put something out about Zero to try to beat it, and then gives a press conference. And then when she goes to give a press conference, basically it gets posted that she is actually the vigilante and like is exposed to the world in the middle of this press conference. So that all takes place, and it's like, it's like being unmasked, you know, and your identity being shown to the world. So that's that one, which was okay it was just okay, to be honest. Then the last one is the anniversary. This was pretty weak. It's Bumblebee and Harold are out on an anniversary dinner, and they stop a robbery. That's literally it. It's just a quick little one shot. So that's Batman the Brave and the Bold. I realize I don't think I showed off what this actually is because I pulled off my notes, and then when I pull up my notes, I can't actually see what's happening here. So I gave it 3.5. Lee gave it a 3.6. Pretty weak book, to be perfectly honest with you. Just back into, this is what Brave and the Bold was, like issue 5 through 10 or something like that. But let's go ahead and show up the artwork. So this is Nightwing and Deadman. So again, the artwork here, pretty solid, I'd say overall. Then we get into the First Watch, and this is just out in the streets patrolling. Again, that story was really good. I'd say that's actually the best one that happened in here. Then we have the Casualty and everything that takes place there with this is the reveal of Zero, so that's what he looks like there. It's pretty cool, almost like a stop sign or do not enter sign across his chest, but it's like black and white, and he's wearing almost like a hockey style mask. And then the Vigilante, of course, is like similar to Watchmen, where it's just like the clear, almost like sock or pantyhose over the head, but wearing like a nice little top hat looking thing. So that was that. And then the last is just Bumblebee. I'd say this is actually the weakest of the art. This is the one that felt the most like almost a newspaper cartoon, is how I would describe that artwork. So yeah, Batman Brave and the Bold. Don't recommend jumping in. Just being honest. So now we get into the X-Men. So this will be interesting because it's basically just going to be one continuous story that I tell for the next 4 books. Yeah, the next 4. And then we have one more after that. So the first one we start off with here is the Uncanny X-Men number 11. And this is the first part of this series. I gave this one a 3.5. Lee gave it a 3.6. So what is not good about this is how confusing it is to start. But overall, this X-Manhunt has some highs and then some lows. So it starts off, I'd say, on a low, because it's just confusing as to what's happening. You got Xavier, he's in Grey Malkin prison, and since he's in Grey Malkin prison, he's all tied up. And remember, we already had basically this back and forth fighting. When did this come out? This came out March 5th. We had this back and forth fighting between the Uncanny X-Men and the X-Men. It was revealed that Professor Xavier's there, and they both decided that they're going to leave him there. Scott's kind of conflicted about him. The Rogue and the Uncanny side are, kind of supporting him, but they realize maybe it's the right thing to do for mutant-human relations at this time, and he's just kept there. But Professor Xavier is starting to have like a bit of a meltdown, and what he is seeing is way off in the distance is his daughter, Xandra, who's an empress on a far, far planet from a whole alien race that he married. He's actually seen a bit of an X-Men. What's it called? X-Men 97 or X-Men 98. Why do I always forget which one it is? X-Men 97. You actually get a bit of that, so you kind of know what I'm talking about if you've seen the cartoon there. And so all that is happening, and he's kind of fighting through his cerebro dampening helmet. But as that's happening, the same thing, or simultaneously, it's discovered that there is a tumor on one of his brain cells, or on his brain cell, which is causing issues with his telepathy, like leaking through the helmet in ways that it shouldn't be leaking through. So that's causing an issue as well. And he's basically going through a psychotic, meltdown. So while that happens, the prison guards and the head of the prison, Dr. Ellis, actually recruits the Uncanny X-Men and is like, here's what's happening to Charles. We don't know what to do. We don't know if we can contain it. Can you please try to talk some sense into him? So they show up into the prison, and Xavier is basically going crazy. He's like, I gotta help my daughter. And so he just keeps fighting all the X-Men and doesn't even realize that it is his X-Men that he's fighting, and he escapes prison. So that is basically the first issue. So let's show off the artwork there. And they're trying to get through to him, but they can't. And so here's Xandra out on whatever planet that she's at, and she's under attack. This is where the Grey Malkin prison is starting to get these readings about Xavier, and they're like, what the hell is happening? And, Xavier clearly is seeing all this stuff. And then we have the Uncanny X-Men. They're basically doing a Danger Room little training thing before they get summoned. And when they do, and here's another basically psychotic thing that's happening and take place, what's her face, the Lady Laud or something like that, was also in prison. Xavier is able to talk to her, talked about his daughter being hurt, and so of course her whole thing is she lost a daughter when she was young, so she helps him out, of course, and that's what frees him. And then the Uncanny X-Men try to respond, and then Xavier just literally takes them all out. And then here's the shot right here, everyone's down, and he has escaped prison trying to go help his daughter. So that is the first one, Uncanny X-Men number 11. I gave it a 3.5. Lee gave it a 3.6. Then we go into Storm number 6, and here's where things start picking up. So I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 3.9 for Storm. And remember from the previous issue, we talked about Oblivion and Eternity and how Storm was going to be Eternity's next champion. But then we have this X-Manhunt thing that starts to take place. So this takes precedent first. And Charles goes to Storm. I don't know what happened in the previous issue with Nyx, so I don't know. As far as part 2. But for part 3, Charles goes to Storm. Storm is part of the Avengers, and she has her whole Storm Cathedral fortress thing that flies up in the air. And Storm is basically protecting Charles for the time being. And it's hey, I know what it's like to be persecuted, and I know what it's like to have the whole world after you, and that's likely where you're going to have Charles, so I have some sympathy. And so while that happens and takes place, the X-Men, not the Uncanny, the regular X-Men, respond, and they're like, Charles, we got to bring you in, right? And Storm is actually on Charles' side and is like, no, you're not going to bring him in. You're going to let him do whatever he's got to do. This man has meant too much to us. He's done so much for us. If he says he's got to go do something, we got to just hear him out and just let him do it. Doesn't make sense to bring him back to that prison. Of course, the X-Men are seeing it differently. We're in a position where Scott is really pissed off at Charles and thinks that he's been manipulated, and constantly Charles just F's things up constantly, and it never actually works out the way he quote-unquote intends it to work. And so the fighting takes place. And so at first, the gloves are on, right? It's play fighting, trying to keep everyone down. But then the grasp of Eternity starts to take place onto Storm. And then she actually starts going Omega level. And everyone's like, whoa, what the hell, man? She's actually trying to kill people. And it gets to the point where she freezes Cyclops' head and his glasses to where, he can't shoot his beams anymore. And it looks like Cyclops is completely down. So that happens. And then Beast, part of the X-Men, he's in this fortress as well. He makes his way to the engine room. And then Charles kind of slipped out. And now he's down in the engine room with Beast. And looks like he's going to go after him. So that's what takes place for that issue, for issue number 6. And this is where things started to get interesting, in my opinion, for this series. So this all fighting and everything that takes place here. And that's when the X-Men, of course, show up. And the fighting starts to take place. Storm doing her thing. And then this is where Storm starts to lose it quite a bit. And starts to become like an Omega threat. Shooting down everyone. Oh, I should say she ripped off, not ripped off, but like broke the mask of Juggernaut, which was like supposed to be a thing that cannot be removed. So that was like kind of insane too. And then there's where Cyclops is down as well with the frost over top of him. And this is where Xavier runs into Beast. So that's Storm number 6. Again, I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 3.9. Then we get into part number 4 of this, which is just now X-Men. So for this, I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 3.9 as well. And here we have Storm and Cyclops basically start to fight again. Or hold on, am I getting this confused? We got the Xavier part. This is the problem when I do multiple of these at once. It's like, what all exactly happened here? Okay, yeah, that's what it was. So, with Beast being in the engine room, Professor Xavier is there, but Omega Kid, who's part of the X-Men as well, he enters the fray, and they basically start to have like this psychic fight between the two, right? And so it looks like Xavier's going to have the upper hand at first, then Omega Kid gets the upper hand on Xavier, and it gets to the point where Charles has to remove his helmet, and when he does that, Beast is right there and sedates him. And so Beast and Omega Kid's like, why didn't you do that before? He's like, he had to take off his helmet, otherwise he would be able to see and stop, and so we had to do that, and then I could sedate him right after. So that's what they decided to do. Storm, who's still fighting as Eternity, basically realizes like, oh, I am fighting my friends, and is able to shake off the influence of Eternity, which is good. And so she stops what she's doing and basically is like, okay, fine, you can have him. But at the very end of this issue, the X Factors then show up, and they're like, no, we got to take Charles back to prison. When the X-Men were just going to take him back up to Alaska. So that's this issue number 13. And then flipping through this, of them, I thought the artwork in this one was actually the best. So who is the artwork on this one? Diaz. So this artwork, I'd say, is the best between, like, look at Storm in this one fighting the Juggernaut. Juggernaut basically regenerates his shield there. And then we have the fighting that takes place between Omega Red and, Omega Kid and Professor Xavier. So that was pretty good. And the fighting that all happens. And then finally, Omega Kid starts to gain the advantage. And then when he does that, where is it that it happens? Maybe it's back here. Maybe it's one more. Here we go. So Professor X takes off Cerebro, and then with that, he puts on Magneto's helmet, where he literally, it was actually kind of cool. So you have Magic there as well. So it does the teleportation, goes to where Magneto is, grabs the helmet, and then after Charles takes off that helmet, immediately puts on Magneto's, and then is able to sedate him right then and there, which was pretty good. So that was cool. But the X Factor at the very end, they end up showing up and getting into the fray. So then the last that I've read anyways of this piece is going to be now part 5 of 7, X Factor versus the X-Men is what it's called. So for this one, which is technically X Factor number 8, the X Factor has now shown up, and we learned that Havoc, and we already knew this, no longer part of the X Factor, and he is, I think, recruited or approached by Frenzy, who's basically like, hey, I'm not part of X Factor either, but I'm part of the Mutant Underground, so let's go do stuff on behalf of Mutant Underground. I hear Xavier's trying to get captured, so that's what they decide to do. X Factor and the X-Men, they just start fighting, going back and forth, and it's mostly Angel who's like taking point on all this, of like, hey, Grey Malkin is a federal prison, X Factor is a like federally mandated thing, so that's why we're trying to take him back. Turns out Angel has some upgrades as well. But while all they're fighting, sure enough, Havoc came through along with Frenzy, swooped up Charles, and ran off. And then when the the X-Men and X-Factor realize it was a little too late. So then Havoc and Frenzy end up like far out in the middle of nowhere. Frenzy's like, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't really know where we're going, but this is where Charles said to go. And Frenzy looked up to Charles and was like, I don't know what's going on, but I look up to him, so I basically trust him. And of course, when that happens, Scott then shows up. So he was out of the fight because of his glasses. Now he's back in the fight. And so Cyclops and now Havoc start fighting, but their powers like kind of cancel out with one another. And so they're actually like not really fighting as far as like doing any damage to each other. But then Xavier, who was sedated, Havoc gave him like a stim shot so he would wake up. He wakes up and he's groggy. He's like, oh, the reason I brought you here, guys. And like he puts his hand on something and he reveals it's the last Krakoa egg, right? So age of Krakoa, all these mutants could, be reborn and rebirth, and the cycle could continue. That's actually funny. Now that I mention it, One World Under Doom, that's one of the things. It's like the X-Men like figured out how to do this, but they just wouldn't share it with the world and only kept it for their people. It's like, what the F? Like, you could have done this for everyone. But anyways, it's the last egg. We don't know who's in it, but it's like a major deal, right? Of like who all could be in it. So once they have like this realization, then someone comes through this portal and grabs Xavier and like goes through a portal and leaves. No idea who it is. No idea what the interests are or where they're going or anything. Just grabs the portal, pulls Xavier, pulls him out. So this one I gave a 3.5. Lee gave it a 3.5 as well. I think mostly because of the comedy bits for one. And then two, when that guy came through the portal and it just looks like generic dude. I'm like, I just don't know. So it's like, why the hell did that just happen? And what else could be happening from here? So that is X-Factor number 8. X-Factor vs. X-Men, and then X-Manhunt part number 5. Woo. Mouthful to get through all that. But that's the story. So, at least thus far. I know I have at least one of the other ones, but I don't know if I have all of them. And then I have the finale as well. But here's all the fighting that takes place. Cyclops doing his thing. The fight between Cyclops and Havoc. The reveal of the egg. And then when Xavier gets taken here and gets sent to a different immortal, through a different dimension. Oh, the other thing that was cool about this, I guess, of the overall X Factor, this is number 300. So they had all the different covers throughout the years shown right here, which I thought was actually pretty cool. So that's that one. Then we have the timeline down here that I'm showing. So we had Uncanny was part 1, the Nyx, Storm, X-Men, X Factor. So I had all but Nyx up to this point. Then Exceptional X-Men, number 7. I think I do have that, but it's called Collateral Damage, so I don't think it's actually part of it. Then X-Force. I know I do not have X-Force. And then the finale is X-Manhunter Omega. The finale, I do have that. So I guess the next one I really just have is the finale. So yeah. That's it. Those are the books. Then one final comic that we have is Local Man. So Local Man Gold is the book here, and for this one it's going to look a little different, obviously, because you have the trade volume here, and this is just going to be the gold. So this is kind of a one-off that took place. I actually only gave it a 3.5. Lee gave it a 4.2. I really didn't like this one, but it wasn't enough to give it a 3, so that's why I ended up with 3.5. It was just a one-off. You have Crossjack and all of, it's not even third gen, it's like a different generation of people. They show up from the past to the present, what is now, but it is those guys' future. And they were fighting something, and it ended up being some sort of interdimensional thing which brought them there. So our Crossjack that we know from the first 5 issues is come to grips with, like, this is the asshole young version of himself who's like a womanizer, only cares about himself, narcissist, the whole 9. And he's like, oh my gosh, I was the worst. And just has to realize like how bad that he was. So bad that he like never called his mom, never sent her flowers on Mother's Day, like never hung out with anyone, only cared about himself. And so he really harps on that. And throughout the journey, they're trying to find this person. It's random. It's a person, and every time that person falls in love, it resets the universe. That's the premise. Dumb, silly, but that's what it is. So of course Crossjack's like, oh, I'll just make her fall in love with me. Easy. So they go and they drive. It's literally 250 miles in a car, and they go to this Walmart where the lady works, and he tries to put on the moves. Of course, it doesn't work. But all this time, someone else from the past shows up that's trying to attack them. Big old fight takes place, and it's like another weird, freakish-looking dude that saves the lady, and she immediately falls in love, and that's what resets it. And so then Crossjack calls back home. He's like, Mom, I'm sorry. Like, it's Mother's Day and I screwed up everything. He's like, don't worry, hon. You sent flowers like you always do. So I guess, like, he did tweak the timeline a little bit, which is cool and pretty cute and all that. But, you know, it was all like, okay, what is this all for? It was just this one little timeline thing. I would have just much preferred I just jumped into issue 6 and then keep the actual story going. So that's why for me, I was like, yeah, this is like just so. It's silly. It's but that's kind of what Local Man is anyways, so I can't fault it too much on that. I just didn't jive with it personally, I would say. So yeah, that is Local Man. Let's go ahead and flip through the artwork here so you can take a look at that. I'd say kind of standard Local Man image stuff that you have going here. Good explosions and things. Sorry, it's just hard to show the trades here without like bending stuff too far and like trying to rip it. It is like a longer one too. Let's see. Yeah, 40 pages is what it says. And that's like 40 pages like with no ads as well. So there's that too. And there's the realization that, you know, he actually did change a little bit as far as Mother's Day is concerned. So that's cool. So yeah, Local Man Gold. Again, I gave it a 3.5. League gave it a 4.2. So that's it. That is everything. Let's go ahead and recap all the books that I had. So you have them, and I like just doing these one sentences things. So, One World Under Doom, Doom's evil plans finally revealed. World Tree, the discovery that the World Tree post actually goes to the future and the past. Absolute Green Lantern number 5, the reveal of John Stewart being the Yellow Lantern. Bitter Roots comes to a conclusion here, but leaves the door open for some more. Batman Brave and the Bold, these anthologies unfortunately struggled. Then we get into our X-Manhunt. So first the Uncanny X-Men, where Charles escapes. Then we have Storm helping out Charles with the help of Eternity. Then we have X-Men 13, which is basically the X-Men getting back into the fight. And Omega Kid versus Xavier. Then X Factor, where Charles reveals the last Krakoan egg, but gets sucked away by some kidnapper. And then Local Man Gold, where we see the evolution of Crossjack and changing ever so slightly. So that's it. Those are the 10 books. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Just tired already, man. It's Tuesday. I've been staying up late. So, but I'm happy that we were able to get it done. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this issue, and I didn't come across as too tired on the microphone. As far as places you can find me, everything's in the socials. Obviously on the video, I'm up on YouTube, as you can tell. Podcast, we are on Spotify and Apple Podcast as per usual. Feel free to like, comment, share. Let me know things you like, things you hate, things you want changed, so on and so forth. Any feedback is much appreciated. So we'll go ahead and close it out. Of course, we'll have Saturday's issue, which will be this week's polls. Let's see, how many do we have? I got League open right here. I have 10 books in total, but I think 2 of which are backlogs. So I'll probably end up doing 4 of these and 4 again. So that way for next week's Omega, yeah. So 4 current, then we'll do 6 backlog for the Saturday, and then we'll do the same for the Omega. Seems to be a pretty good fit thus far. So yeah, thanks again for tuning in. Really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
This has been a DMW production. Thanks for stopping by.